Now, I spent much of yesterday's show talking about the shocking news that Mike Freer will stand down as a minister at the next election because of fears of his own public safety. Freer said he'd received death threats from Muslims Against Crusades. The Justice Minister also says he only avoided being murdered by terrorist Ali Harbi Ali by the skin of his teeth. And of course, Ali went on to kill fellow Conservative MP Sir David Amess. Well, Dr. Rakib Ehsan is a social policy analyst who's written an article for The Telegraph today that has the frightening yet sobering headline, Islamism is destroying British democracy. And Rakib joins me now. Thank you for joining us on the show, Rakib. Islam is destroying British democracy. Would you care to detail why you think that's the case?
Well, firstly, we have an MP here who's ultimately being driven out of politics as a result of Islamist intimidation and harassment. Now, in the spirit of honesty, Martin, I would say that I have very different views to Mike Freer when it comes to Israel-Palestine. But the point is that we're talking about an MP who's been elected by his local constituents and returned to the Commons on 4 consecutive occasions. And I believe that being a part of being a mature British citizen is accepting the plurality of views over a range of domestic and geopolitical matters, including those of a decidedly sensitive nature. And I think that this is just yet another example of what I call the Islamist-inspired erosion of British parliamentary democracy.
And it's not just parliamentary democracy, Rakib, that's being eroded. We're seeing multiple cases in our schools. Catherine Birbalsingh at the Michaela Academy, death threats, bomb threats, smash windows after she introduced a Muslim prayer ban. The Sparkley School in Leighton sent a pupil home for wearing a Palestinian flag. That's had bomb threats. And of course, the Batley Grammar School teacher still in hiding over 2 years on. And Rakib, there's a central ideology behind all of these incidents, isn't there?
Well, I'd make the point that I'm personally, Martin, a member of a racial, ethnic and religious minority, and I'm deeply appreciative of the rights, freedoms and protections which are allocated under British democracy. But I think the issue here is that those rights, protections and freedoms, they're being exploited in the name of religio-political tribalism. They're not being appreciated by certain elements of the British Muslim population in line with the common good. And I think that is a very serious problem. And as you say, it's not just politicians under threat, it's also schools. You see that Islamist intimidation. And I make the point that some of the stories which have emerged from Michaela School is that you had Muslim pupils coercing co-religious peers into participating into various forms of religious activity. And I think the point to make there is that there's Islamist intimidation, not just towards non-Muslims, but also within British Muslim communities.
OK, Rakib, you very eloquently identified the problem. What's the solution? Do we need new laws, or do we have existing laws, but yet there's a reluctance, there's a fear to actually enforce and police them?
Well, I think that there's a culture of political correctness, but also fear within our public institutions when it comes to tackling Islamist activity in the public sphere. I think you've certainly seen that with the policing of recent protests which have taken place in London, where there has been anti-Semitic chanting, as well as the displaying of pro-terror paraphernalia. And I also think a real issue here is that many of these tribal ideologues, they managed to worm their way into state institutions, taxpayer-funded bodies. And I think that's even the case when it comes to institutions in the law and order space. So what we actually need a full audit exploring people's potential links with problematic organisations and indeed extremist organisations which may be prescribed by the Home Office, and they need to be weeded out of the British state and they need to be disempowered. And I think crucially, I'd make this point, Martin, we need to break away from this multicultural model where we empower so-called community leaders who are anything but representative of the communities that they belong to.
OK, Rakib Ehsan, thank you for joining us on the show. Bravely speaking out about the threat of Islamist extremism in Britain. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.